Welcome back to some new r/PettyRevenge stories, where people share small victories over those who wronged them. I hope you had a great day. Thanks for all the likes and comments on the last video. And now let's start with the first story. It's called Credit Card Payments. Back in the early 1980s, I had a credit card with a bank from my home state. At the time, I lived a few states away, so I made it a habit to send out my payments around the 1st of the month, well before the due date on the 15th. It seemed like a foolproof plan, until it wasn't. Here's the issue. The office where you mailed the payments was on one side of the state, but the main billing center was on the other. And this was long before computers were directly connected, so they had to transport digital tapes between the offices. Every now and then, the mail would get delayed or something else would happen, and I'd get a stern phone call from them on the 16th, accusing me of not paying on time. It was exhausting to explain repeatedly that I had already sent the payment, only to get attitude from them as if I was in the wrong. The final straw came one day when I got home, checked my mail, and found my bank statement along with my cancelled checks. Sure enough, there was my payment for the credit card, cleared well before the due date. About 10 minutes later, the phone rang. A representative called to chew me out for not paying on time, going on and on about how this wasn't the first time they'd had to remind me. That's when I lost my patience. I interrupted and said, "Ma'am, I am literally holding a cancelled check made out to your bank that cleared 4 days ago. My bill has been paid and I'm done listening to this." At this point, I decided I'd had enough. It was time to get a little creative. I had just gotten a much better credit card, so I didn't need this one anymore. But instead of cancelling it outright, I decided to make them pay. Literally. I sent in the remaining balance along with an overpayment of 1 cent. The card wasn't set to expire for another 8 months, so every month the bank had to send me a statement showing my 1 cent credit balance. When the expiration date finally approached, I cancelled the card. Then, just as I'd hoped, they mailed me a check for the 1 cent overage. Of course I cashed it. For 8 months I made them print and mail statements, then go through the process of cutting and processing a check for a single penny, all of which cost them far more than that 1 cent. The next story is called Karma Worked. I live in a remote area where jobs can be hard to come by. Over the years I've worked a variety of jobs, made great friends, and built a solid network of professional contacts in my community. Since there aren't many young people willing to work, I was often approached by businesses looking for help. One day, my former employer, the owner of a small clinic, asked me to leave my current job for a full-time clinical role with her. The pay wasn't great, just a little above minimum wage, but she promised that within a few months I'd get a raise that would far surpass what other businesses could offer. Plus the experience would look great on my resume, and I'd have more time to focus on finishing school. Despite the promise, the raise never came. Every couple of months I'd bring it up, and she'd say something like, "If you learn this skill or implement this system, we'll discuss the idea of a raise." For an entire year I worked tirelessly, handling appointments, procedures, emergencies on weekends and more. I even stepped up when others called out. Every month she'd praise my work, saying how much she appreciated my effort and how quickly I learned. Yet every time I asked about the raise, it was, "Just hold on a little longer, we'll talk next month." About 5 months in, due to insurance issues and my need to focus on school, I had to cut my hours slightly, from 30 to 32 hours a week to about 25 to 27. This change allowed me to qualify for Medicaid, which was my primary concern. When I explained my decision to the owner, she confirmed that she and her family were also on Medicaid. I was shocked. Here was someone running her own successful clinic, making 6 figures, and yet still on Medicaid. She even admitted she's been on it for years, along with her husband and kids. I tried explaining that her income likely disqualified her, but she dismissed it, saying, "Who's going to know? It's not like anyone's checking." Around this time, another employee also cut her hours for a higher paying job closer to home. Realizing she couldn't keep paying us such low wages, the owner called a staff meeting to explain why raises hadn't happened. She blamed the cost of running a new business, her family expenses, and other financial struggles. During this meeting, she called out me and another employee for bringing up raises during evaluations, claiming it wasn't the right time. To make matters worse, she announced that she'd need to send some staff home early to save money. Meanwhile, she was living quite comfortably, evidenced by her purchase of a $600,000 home with a stunning view. On 3 separate occasions, she even asked me to move in with her to help pay her mortgage. Each time I politely declined. After that, things took a turn. She began calling me days in advance, or even just minutes before my shifts, to tell me not to come in. My hours dropped rapidly, averaging only 12 hours a week toward the end. Then I noticed a personal reminder on our shared staff system that confirmed my suspicions. She had planned to cut only my hours and replace me with unpaid interns. The next time she cancelled my shift at the last minute, I confronted her about everything. She and the HR rep were stunned and didn't know how to respond. Soon after, I was fired. When the clinic tried to fight my unemployment claim, I came prepared with photo evidence and recordings that proved my hours had been unfairly cut, and my termination was retaliatory. I also highlighted the gossip the owner spread about her own staff, which everyone at the clinic had heard. Thankfully, I was granted unemployment benefits. Shortly after, I reported her for benefit fraud. She had been on Medicaid for over 2 years, despite her high income, and the authorities took notice. While I couldn't get the exact details, I learned she was required to pay back what she owed and faced possible felony charges. Her attempts to hire unpaid interns failed. Her finances were under scrutiny, and her charity was also being monitored. Karma worked its magic, and she finally had to face the consequences of her actions. The last story is called Restaurant Closed. Years ago, a friend of my father worked in a well-known restaurant. At the time, his boss was a fantastic manager. He paid all overtime, divided tips fairly among the staff, and even offered bonuses for meeting sales targets. Everyone respected him, and not a single employee had a bad word to say about him. Eventually, this man in his 60s decided to retire and handed the business over to his eldest son. Unfortunately, the son was the complete opposite of his father. He arrived late, often took cash from the register for personal outings, and didn't contribute much, other than shouting about how the restaurant needed to make more money. Problems began almost immediately. At the end of the first month of transition, he refused to pay overtime, stopped sharing tips, and discontinued bonuses for meeting sales goals. Keep in mind, this was a large restaurant in Lisbon, and the business wasn't struggling financially. Still, he chose to withhold what the staff had rightfully earned. The employees warned him that he had 1 week to pay overtime, but he ignored them, knowing that tips and bonuses weren't legally required. The following Monday, the staff took matters into their own hands. They closed the restaurant, locking the doors and leaving customers outside. When the new owner arrived, they confronted him, demanding their overtime pay and tips. Instead of addressing their concerns, he began shouting and fired everyone on the spot. The matter went to court, and the decision was clear. The employees were entitled to overtime pay and compensation for unjust layoffs. However, even after the ruling, the owner delayed payments for months. The court eventually issued a final warning. Either he paid his debts or his assets would be seized. Under pressure, he paid what he owed. But he didn't stop there. He began sending threatening letters and making phone calls to the employees, vowing revenge. As my grandmother always said, never mess with anyone, because you never know how or when it might come back to you. Among the employees was my father's friend, a man with a bit of an unpredictable streak. At one point, the new owner made a disturbing comment about poisoning the man's dog. Taking precautions, the man sent his beloved pet to live with his parents. but couldn't shake the idea of getting back at the owner. New Year's Eve provided the perfect opportunity. The restaurant was packed that night, but by this time the quality of food had noticeably declined. Traditional Portuguese cuisine wasn't the same under new management, especially with inexperienced staff in the kitchen. My father's friend went to the restaurant with 3 friends, including my dad. Partway through their meal, he stood up and shouted, "What is this? A cockroach in the fries? This fried cockroach has been in everyone's food." He yelled about fried cockroach he had brought from home. One he had caught, fried and brought with him, specifically for this moment. The commotion was immediate. Some customers shouted, others rushed to the restroom, and chaos broke out. The police were called, and most customers refused to pay for their meals. The restaurant's reputation was ruined. Word spread quickly, and within 2 months, the business closed its doors for good. Thanks for watching the video to the end. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, comment and subscribe. And if you have time, watch another one of my videos. Also, if you want to support me further, check out the channel membership or Patreon. And now, I hope you have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.